Hello everyone and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today I'm going to be doing my round 17 tips and predictions for the AFL season, going through every game, talking a little bit about each team, their form coming into it, as well as where I think the game might be won and lost for those teams, something like particular matchup, their form, where if it's at a certain team's home ground or not. And then we'll also be able to have a good look at the ladder right at the end of the video, because Squiggly gives us a really good view as to how the rounds might pan out. Before we get into the video, it'd really help my channel if you would leave a like and subscribe to my channel. It will really help push this video in the YouTube algorithm. And as well, if you want, leave your thoughts in the comments below and I can have a quick chat with you as well about them. But with that being said, let's get straight into the video. So we kick off round 17 with a huge blockbuster game between two rivals in Collingwood and Essendon. This game's at the MCG, and I think it could very easily get another 92, 93, 94,000 crowd like they did last time for the Anzac Day game. It's a huge occasion. Collingwood coming off a very not brave loss, but tough loss, I think you can say, against Gold Coast up at Carrara Stadium, or TAO, people's too many names. It's a really good performance, even though they didn't win. They got the lead in the last quarter after coming back, after being down for like 4 goals for most of the game. Nick Dacos was superb. I think he had over 30 touches and a goal. The goal he did kick was fantastic. Sold some candy, got past, kicked it from about 40 out straight in front. So beautiful on the run to be able to do that. But it's unfortunate they couldn't get the win. They did get to go. There was Myercheck and Pendle's back, but still weren't able to get the win. It'll be time for them to get back to their best, though. And then Essendon coming off a 45-point loss to Geelong, I believe. Yes, there were some incorrect decisions in the third quarter. I personally didn't watch the game. I've seen a couple of them, and they were free kicks. Definitely the Draper one, but the others I haven't really seen enough of. But it's unfortunate. Should they have won the game? I don't think so. I think they really lowered their heads in that third quarter after not getting some decisions. And I think every team this year has faced some bad quarters and haven't been able to really lower their heads like Essendon did. Also, some of their players have come out in the post-game and said that they weren't really prepared, or they didn't know what the rules directly were, or what they said was wrong. So that's kind of interesting to me. Do they know the rules really? But it was interesting that they really lowered their heads and didn't really try to fight through it as much. I didn't watch the game, so I wasn't really watching how they returned afterwards, but that's sort of what I've heard. And it'll be a very interesting game. I think Essendon's forward line have really slowed down, even though Stringer's been good still. Peter Wright hasn't been great. He could have done better on the weekend, but still that form from 2021, he hasn't been able to get back. Yes, he's had injuries, but still hasn't been there. Langford has been good this year, but definitely not at his 2023 best. And then Harry Jones as well, still very young. And outside of that, Jade Gresham has really stopped. He hasn't been able to hit the scoreboard recently. And then Collingwood, their backline has also been very, very troublesome. They haven't been anywhere nearly as strong as they were last year. Yes, they lost Murphy, but still it's not enough of a difference to how bad they've been performing defensively this year. Darcy Moore has just had a huge drop-off in terms of his intercepting game, and he's not able to then go roll back and get on his man to be able to lock down. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Essendon forward line is able to go against a down Collingwood backline. I think that's where the game will be swung. And I think the midfield battle will be interesting as well. But I think with the second week with Pendles, De Goey, Myercheck being back as well, I think Collingwood should be favourites. And I think they'll get the win and should be around just 2.5, 3 goals. We then have North Melbourne versus Gold Coast at Docklands. North Melbourne coming off a 17-point loss to the Doggies. Also didn't watch that game as I was busy doing an internship. North were down for majority of the game by 3, if not more goals. And then right at the end, I think about 40 down, they came back and got it to within 3 goals. Their midfield has been better. LDU didn't have a great game, but he's been in some terrific form. Wardlaw is the outright favourite for the Rising Star, and it's understand why. And then Sheasel and Simpkin are being more damaging. Sheasel's played more forward. He's been able to get more impactful touches. as well as their backline being a bit better. Charlie Comben, I'm a huge fan of. I think he's been very, very good this year. It's a good change for him. He looks really big. He looks a tough defender to go up against each week, and I think is a piece for the future. And then up forward as well, they've got some pieces. It's just finding what else. And then you've got Gold Coast coming off a terrific win against Collingwood up at Carrara Stadium, whatever it is. They were, as I said, up for most of the game, lost the lead right at the end, and then were able to snag it back, which shows that there is something there, but they still haven't won on the road, and this needs to be the first time they do it. It's against North Melbourne. Yes, it's at Marvel, but thankfully it's not down in Tassie, so it's not even more of a trip. This needs to be the one they get. How well can their forward line go? Ben King, could he kick a bag this week and get right back into the Coleman medal race? Because Kerno didn't have a fantastic week kicking goals. I think he kicked one, maybe two. And I believe Ben King kicked four. So I believe it's a 2-goal difference. Maybe he can go in the outright lead, given Carlton are playing GWS, a very defensively solid team. So it'll be huge for him. And Gold Coast need to get this win if they want to really push for finals. They're on 8 wins at the moment, and this win would get them all the way up to 4th or 5th. So it's a huge win for them to get, and I think they will win it. So I think it could get as far as 5 goals because North Melbourne just haven't shown the ability to stay in games for 4 quarters. Yeah, so it gets them to 6. That's huge for them. We then have another, not big game, but important game between Port and the Bulldogs, teams sitting 8th and 10th. The reason why it's important is because there's essentially one game separating 4th and 13th. So 1.5. That's huge. That means like at least every game means one team is being affected by the result in the 8. So, or in the 8 race, which is big. Put Adelaide coming off a 2-point win against St Kilda. It was a tough game to watch. 2 goals each in the second half, 2 goals in the third for Port, none in the fourth, sorry. But they were still able to get the win. Zach Butters had 18 touches in the first quarter, and in the first half, sorry, and then only 4 in the second, but it was still super damaging. Anytime he got the ball, his speed, St Kilda just couldn't contain, and his kicking is superb, especially inside 50. He almost always finds the target with some stupid around the body kick that you hate to watch, but it's just fantastic at the same time. Jason Horne-Francis as well was very, very impressive. His damage with the ball is there at times. It's just about him putting all the pieces together. His burst from the midfield as well. He does like to stay on the back of some stoppages and be a more forward midfielder, but it can work, and when it does work, it's very, very impressive. Outside of that, Brandon Zerk-Thatcher was excellent on Max King, even though he was injured in the second half. It was a fantastic performance to be able to beat him in some of the one-on-one contests that he did, and it'll be interesting now to see if Radicali does get back in the team, because they looked very defensively solid with just Alir and Zerk-Thatcher there. Outside of that, their forward line, it still didn't look great. They couldn't find many answers. Ollie Lord still looks good, but outside of that, Marshall and Georgiades just aren't there, and Finlayson barely noticed him. I think he just had one genuine moment, which is the kick from outside 50 in the third quarter, which is still important, but I don't think he's been fantastic by any means. And then you've got the Bulldogs, who got a good win against North Melbourne by 17 points, just needed to get it, stay in the race for the 8. Adam Treloar was the one who got tagged over Bontempelli, which is an interesting decision. I think it's certainly something that could be used a bit more if they get it right, but it also depends on Bontempelli and how much he wants to play forward. The Bulldogs went with a taller forward line, some thought, but they ended up moving Rory Lobb into defence, which is a very late move that they decided to make in training. Apparently only played like 5 minutes practice as a defender, but it worked. But also against North Melbourne, you're playing Brendan Teagle. Not much really to go up against. And so it'll be interesting against a more challenging team. He might get the Finlayson matchup, I'd assume, this week. But again, not much of a challenge. It'll be interesting to see how it goes, though, because it's something that they might be able to use going forward if it does work and keep him on their books. which will be very interesting. This game, I genuinely don't know who to pick. I think the midfield battle will probably change it. Does Butters get on top? Is there really someone to go to him? Does Richards go to him? Does Willem Drew go to Treloar? Does Willem Drew go to Bont? Does Ollie Wines go to Bont? Maybe to see if you can get him in a bit more of a physical contest. It'll be interesting. I think Rosie as well will need to have a big game, see if he can get back to that captain form. And honestly, I don't know who to tip. I think I'll go Bulldogs in a bit of an upset given it's Port Adelaide's home game by 7 points. We then have Geelong versus Hawthorn at Cardinia Park. Geelong coming off a good win against Essendon. Hawthorn coming off a very impressive win against the West Coast Eagles. Mitch Lewis should be back for the game for the Hawks. And I don't know if Ollie Henry will be back for the Cats, but Tom Hawkins definitely won't. And I believe that'll be the only change. They looked more exciting up forward. They looked quicker. They looked more, not aggressive, but they looked more energetic with Rowan and with Shannon Neal. They looked like they could move a bit better, which is huge for Cameron. He's able to get up and back a bit better. He's able to have more impact in the game, used more as a forward as well, and that helped. And their midfield didn't get battered, which is good because they're coming up against a very solid midfield with a very good ruckman who's in a lot of form. Not a lot, but in some very good form in Lloyd Meek. They're going up against Warple, Newcomb, Day, Nash, Mackenzie, some really good names in there. And it'll be tough. You're coming up against a very, very fun team as well. And the transition game will be interesting. I think if you want to stop Geelong, you stop Ryan Myers and you can stop their game going into the forward 50. And does a Finn McGuinness come in and do that? Maybe. It'll be interesting. I think if you can also slow down D'Ambrosio and Amon for Geelong, maybe you can get a bit of an edge and stop their ball movement as well, and then put someone on Sicily. See if you can stop him, like what they've been doing to Stewart, as well as what can Stewart do this week. He was used as a defensive midfielder who sort of stayed back a little bit off the stoppage. Cannot work again this week. It'll be a wait and see. Geelong probably are considered favourites given they look to be back on form. But I think it'll be a very interesting game. Obviously, a big rivalry. Again, it's another game where I'm struggling to think who wins because Hawthorn are in some fantastic form. And does Mitch Lewis coming back mean that they have to move Sam de Koning back into the backline to go in a one-on-one contest with him? And so I'm very, very not sure. I think I'll go Geelong as the home team, and I think I just don't know. It's such a tough decision here, but I'll go Geelong, and I'll go by just over 2 goals, and then have GWS versus Carlton at the Sydney Showground. GWS coming off a disappointing loss against Adelaide, although it was in Adelaide, and then Carlton coming off a very good win against the Tigers. Yes, it's the Tigers, but still 10 goals. I think very impressive. Their midfield was fantastic. Cripps and Walsh both were fantastic. 40 touches for Cripps, done it in back-to-back games. He's been superb this year, probably top 3 in the Brownlow medal at the moment. And then up forward, even though Kerno got held, everyone else was very good. Fantasia had easily his best game for the Blues. And then down back there, just very, very good. Newman, I think, is still extremely underrated. Started slowly at the start of the year, but has now worked himself into some really, really good form. And then for the Giants, Sam Taylor won't be back, and that sort of means that I think Carlton will win. A bit of a spoilers, but I just don't think they've been defensively solid and shown enough without him to be able to properly contend against the Blues. Their midfield hasn't been anywhere near as damaging as it was last year, and given Chincotta's role in the last few weeks, he'll be the obvious matchup on Lachie Whitfield. And when you quell his influence, the game is set up for Lachie Whitfield to dominate, and he can't dominate, so then the Giants don't get it. The Blues should also be bringing back de Koning in, and up against Briggs, it'll be a very interesting matchup because it's 2 ruckmen who sort of last year Briggs was in some excellent form in the back half, and de Koning seems to be doing the same this year, and so it'll be interesting to see if Briggs can handle de Koning and his form. But the Blues, as I said, should win, and I think they'll get it done by just over 20 points. The other Saturday night game is between Richmond and Fremantle at Perth Stadium. Fremantle coming off one of the biggest upsets of the year, quite clearly, the 1-point win over Sydney, where Logan McDonald just misses a shot from just over 50 metres. And then the Tigers coming off a disappointing loss against Carlton, but you can't say it wasn't too expected. This should be one of the more simple games for the round, pretty clearly. Fremantle didn't really drop off too much defensively without Alex Pearce, even though it was a high-scoring game. They still look good. Luke Ryan was really, really important down there, and they were able to fill Alex Pearce's role quite well. And then up forward, they still look good with the two ruck system between Jackson and Darcy. They're able to get damage with Tracy and Amos as the other two forwards, and their Mosquito fleet still is working really well at the moment. Their midfield wasn't as disposal heavy as they had been in the rest of the year. I think the most outside of Ryan was maybe 25 from Brayshaw. So that shows real progression, that they're able to win when the game isn't always on their terms. And then it should be just a simple win because it's Richmond. It'll be important for them to lock down Shea Bolton and Liam Baker and also Daniel Rioli. Those are their three main pieces now. Tim Taranto is still good. Hopper's not bad. Nankerv is still good. But outside of that, there's just a lot of young pieces. And it's at home for Fremantle. So it should be a simple, at least 30-point win for them. Next is Melbourne versus West Coast at the MCG. Melbourne are coming off Melbourne are coming off a disappointing loss against Brisbane, where they had the lead for essentially all of the game and then just couldn't hang on. Frisch had an opportunity right at the death, essentially, and missed a snap from like 40 out, and they weren't able to get the win in the end. It was still a good performance, and if they do that for the rest of the year, if they're able to keep that level of performance up, then they should still at least challenge to make the 8, but they just weren't able to get the win, and I think it's really shot their season. Viney was superb and untaggable. They tried to put Berry to him, and it didn't work. They moved Oliver forward to see if he was going to get tagged, and he was definitely better than what he had been. But outside of that, I think defensively, they still haven't looked as solid. Brisbane kicked a fair few on them late, and yes, it's up there. Yes, it's Brisbane, but still. And then you compare that to the Eagles getting whacked by Hawthorn at home. Disappointing performance. Got Reid back, got Kelly back, and they still weren't able to really hang in there against Hawthorn's midfield. The ruck situation is definitely a problem. Flynn's going to be out now with an ankle injury, and so they're going to have to play Williams and probably Marich as a backup ruckman, so not ideal. And then also a couple of their more experienced defenders didn't have great games. Duggan was very poor by foot. Barras had a lot of mismatched opponents at times. He was on Watson. At times he wasn't really on a bigger body, which is what he needs because he is a pretty slow defender and he's much better in one-on-ones than he is trying to chase on a mark. But it's at the MCG and it should be a very, very simple win for Melbourne, but they need to try and slow down Harley Reid. Maybe they put Trent Rivers to him. He's got the size to be able to go with him, but Melbourne should still get the win by a pretty comfortable 4-goal margin. Next up is St Kilda versus Sydney at Marvel Stadium. St Kilda coming off a disappointing 2-point loss to Port Adelaide, and Sydney coming off a 1-point loss to Fremantle at home. Both teams losing by under a goal at home, and yeah, I think St Kilda are definitely not going to win this game. They've just lost Max King for the season. He had a PCL injury just after halftime, and he's going to be out for the rest of the season. And they're coming up against the best team in the league. So take that for what you will. I will say that we do normally play pretty well against Sydney. It is normally pretty close games as well. And don't be surprised if it is close. But their midfield normally goes crazy. They've been very good this year, although Warner has started to dip. Heaney has started to dip. But that's only risen with Goulden. I don't believe Mills will be back this week. but he should be back soon for Sydney, which is good. I think they do need him back pretty soon. But St Kilda, if their defensive mids can hold Sydney up, they might be able to keep it close, as I said. But I just don't think they'll be able to score enough without Max King. Even though he hasn't been in great form this year and he has struggled, they still need him to score heavily, and they just won't be able to do that. And so Sydney will win. I don't think it'll be anything more than, let's say, 4 or 5 goals, but it should be at least three goals that they win up by the Swans. And then we have Brisbane versus Adelaide. The Lions got a great comeback win against the Demons on Friday night up at the Gabba by 5 points. Hugh McCluggage kicking a ripper to give them a lead in the fourth. And then the Crows got a very good win against the Giants at Adelaide Oval. Isaac Rankin putting in a great first half performance. I think he kicked 2 goals, 3, and had 16 touches or something. So one of the best first half performances I think I've seen. A lot of players are happy with that for a full game. So really props to him for getting back in such great form after some injuries. This is a very interesting game because it's two teams who are sitting on the outer right now. Brisbane, they jumped up to, I think it was 5th at one stage after they got the win, and are now all the way back down to 11th. But if they do get it, they're all the way back up. And so that's big for them. They'd go to 6th. And it's really important for them to get this win. It's up at the Gabba as well, so that gives them probably a 3-goal buffer over the Crows. And I think that Adelaide have got some really interesting pieces. Who goes to Rankin will be interesting, given he's playing more midfield. Had he had been a forward, it would have been probably Starcevic, I think, and he probably goes to Rochelle. But it'll be interesting to see if Berry goes to him, because I don't know if he's got the speed to stay with him. He's got the endurance, sure, but Rankin has been super damaging, and it'll also be interesting to see who goes to Lachie Neale for the Crows side. Does Jordan Dawson take that role and see if he can shut him? Maybe Sam Berry comes in and does something. It'll be a very interesting game. I don't think the Lions should have too many difficulties outside of Rankin and maybe Walker, because he might really play really well, because I don't think Harris Andrews will take him. But outside of that, everything is leaning towards the Lions, and I think they'll get the win by about 2 goals. I don't think it'll be an overly confident win for them. But that finishes off the round, and as we can see, Sydney still have a 2-win margin over the rest, and then you've got the Blues with a 6-point margin over Fremantle and a 8-point margin over Geelong for the rest. Interesting to see Fremantle all the way up in 3rd. It's very impressive for them, starting off a really promising season, and they've been able to continue that form. Geelong all the way back there as well, with a win over Hawthorn, back into top 4. Brisbane and Collingwood, the 2 grand finalists from last year, in 5th and 6th. And then you've got Bulldogs and Essendon as the 2 7 and 8th spots. Outside of that, you've got Gold Coast, Melbourne, Port, and then GWS all the way down at 12th. Hawthorn, this win changes a lot for them. They don't have the percentage really to be able to properly contend for the 8, even if they do get some wins. So that probably hurts them a little bit. And then nothing really changes from the bottom. But that's going to be the end of this video. If you like it, please hit the like button on this video. Really help push my video in the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you like this type of content. There'll be more to come as well. I'm hoping to get a couple of those deep dives out before finals, which should be really good for you guys. And then leave your thoughts in the comments below as well on who you might think will win some of these games. But that's going to be it. See you all next time.